I went my entire life and had never experienced a day without water until 2014 when it actually happened to me. So now I would say that a day without water means a day in the life of millions of people who struggle with water insecurity and affordability and access to affordable, clean, safe water. It's beyond. It's like living a day in the life in a third world country. It's a mess, and it's unaffordable, and it's so ironic that we as citizens, as a community, we own our water department. Most water departments are either the county or state public works. We own our water department, the city of Detroit residents, paid into that to build that water department. Yet we get our water sold to us at retail rates in 126 municipalities and townships. They get water off of Detroit, all pay wholesale. So many people are afraid to speak out about water shutoffs and the travesty that's done to them because they're like, my kids are going to get taken. You get stigmatized by your community, by society. Like literally, we're also talking about the water restoration program that was part of the executive order in the Senate bills that we have in the state house. And people still were unaware that all of this was going on with water shutoffs and these bills were in effect that we're trying to get passed. People had no knowledge of it because people are so busy with their lives and they're so siloed from other people in community. Massive Detroit water shutoff, which was done, in my opinion, they'll never own up to it anyway, to make the water department a viable asset in the city's bankruptcy. The second time it got cut off was in October of 2014, right during the midst of when the United Nations rapporteurs came and they toured the city and they spoke to impacted residents about what was going on in the city with the water and declared it a human rights violation. Mm-hmm. My water had just recently got cut off again because I guess I should probably start my story right quick, the condensed version. So I came up here from Hurricane Katrina in 2005. I found a residence and went through a divorce and I was pregnant at the time. I had my youngest daughter who's now 14. And I had my 3 youngest children out of 7 with me. And
what neighborhood?
I guess I was just trying to rebuild.
No, it's all good. You're in Detroit, right? What neighborhood?
I'm in now I'm in a neighborhood called Warrendale that's like on the cusp of Dearborn, Michigan. It's like on the border between Dearborn and Detroit. When I was dealing with the shutoffs, I was in Northwest Detroit neighborhood on the cusp of Southfield, ironically.
Yeah.
So I'm always on the cusp of one of those suburbs that get water from Detroit, ironically, but don't deal with the stressors that Detroit residents have to deal with surrounding water. And it was, of course, because they buy it wholesale.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get their water wholesale, so they're getting a deal anyway. I was trying to rebuild my life and pick up the pieces because literally when I came up here, I was pregnant. I had 3 young children, and I literally had like the clothes on my back. That's it. And I've always been one that's always had like a bag with like birth certificates and social security cards and things like that in it, kept in a safe place. So I was able to grab that. But like besides that, like I didn't have time to grab any mementos or personal effects or things that I built. Like, so like things that normal people would just take for granted that people have. Like I have no real baby pictures of my children. I have no family mementos anymore. Like all that was gone. And I got up here and I moved into a home. And for some reason, the person that owned the home that I was renting from decided to sell. And the woman who bought it only wanted equity, so we moved. So in 2006, shortly after my youngest daughter was born, I think she might have been like 4 months, we moved to a new house. I stayed there until 2009. So I was there for like 3 years. I paid my water bill faithfully, never had a problem. When I moved is when the problem started. When I moved, the water department told me that in order to transfer water, if I was going to be responsible for it, which is now in the state of Michigan up to the property owner, they can choose to handle the water bill or they can choose to have the tenant pay the water bill. It used to be automatic. If you were a renter, you were not responsible for the water. It had to be included in the rent. So I had to get an affidavit stating that I was going to be responsible for the water, and my balance had to be at 0 in order for me to transfer the water. All of that was done because my water transferred, and the affidavit has to be filed within a week of you moving into the property, which was, I moved in like mid-July. The end of July, it was already filed on record. I was paying my water bill faithfully. And I asked them before I moved, I said, well, are you going to shut the water off in the house that I'm moving from so I can have someone there to let you in before I return the key? Water department says no, because we don't like pipes freezing and things like that. So what it does is when you bring in the affidavit, the address you're moving from, it just reverts back to the property owner. Or we just send a bill in resident, and it's up to the property owner's responsibility. So I said, okay. I did everything they told me to do. I moved. No one was staying in the house. Everything was fine. Then I would say it stayed like that for like a year and a half. And then in February of 2013, I started noticing that my bills started creeping up slowly. First, it started maybe like, it was maybe $60 or $70 more. And I'm like, maybe I have a leak somewhere. And I always have the running joke, like my youngest son, who's the only male in the house, was like 12. You had to beat him to take a shower. Like he was not concerned. He did not understand how puberty worked and that he needed to take showers every day, maybe twice a day now, So I'm like, why is my water bill going up? And I contacted the water department, and all they would tell me is it's actual usage. And I said, well, okay. They said, well, you need to get your house checked for leaks. We don't do that. I explained to them, I said, I'm low income. I'm a single parent. I'm in school. I'm not really working. I'm literally doing work study. And they were like, well, you still have to pay for a plumber. So I found a friend of my older son's who is now a licensed journeyman in the process. He hadn't been licensed yet, but he worked with a plumbing company, and he got his boss to come out. He checked everything in the house, no leaks, no running toilets, no drippy pipes, nothing. And I kept calling the water department saying my bill's going up, and my bill is literally to the point where normally my bill was somewhere between $120 and $140, which was still high, but I already knew that their rates are exorbitant. But now it was like $300 and $400 a month. Yeah, it gets worse. And so I'm struggling to pay the bill, and I'm getting to the point where it's like, oh, I don't have to put this much on the electric bill because I got to keep water on, or I don't have to put this much on the gas bill, or we won't have cable because I got to make sure we have utilities. And it makes no sense to have cable if you don't have water. You need water. It's a necessity. So I'm steadily trying to find ways to cut bills, eradicate bills, or cut corners to make sure that this water bill gets paid. And I'm steadily contacting the water department, getting no answers. And bill just keeps creeping up to the point where my bill is now like $500 for a month. And I'm trying to still send in $350 because I don't have $500. And that's steadily making it go up because in the next month, I have that, $150 left plus the late fees plus the current bill, and it's steadily getting bigger and bigger. And I asked them, it's so funny because I always say I have this like gift similar to The Shining, where like I just get an idea of what could possibly be the issue, and I will bring it up to the person. So I call the water department and I go, is it possible that I'm being billed for water at my previous address? And they go, oh no, definitely not. Did you fill out the affidavit? And I said, I did. And I said, but it's happened all of a sudden. And they were like, no, that's not the issue. And it's so ironic because maybe like 2 days after that, my niece asked me to take one of her girlfriends home from school. And I'm driving her home and I'm like, I used to live over here. And then we turn on the block that I used to live on. I said, I used to live on this street. And we pull up in front of a house and I'm like, oh my God, that's the house I used to live in. Didn't think anything of it then. I dropped the young lady off but something stuck in my mind is that the property owner had boarded the house up because he didn't have a tenant in it. And the house was still boarded up. And I'm like, so in my mind, I'm thinking like they can't be renting and not have, the boards would be taken down. And I'm like, they have to be squatting. And I'm not one to judge anybody. Some people may have to squat. If you do, do what you have to do to keep a roof over your family's head. Just don't use other people. And so I found out that they were squatting in the home, and I contacted the water department. They said, well, it's nothing they could do. And I'm like, well, you know, this is what I believe is the reasoning behind my water bill being so high, because when I'm paying my bill every month, maybe you're putting that money on the other bill that's accumulating, which was far more many people in that home than it was in mine. Mm-hmm. And they told me that could not be the problem. And so in May of 2014, I got to take my kids to school. I came back to wash the dishes and my water didn't come on. And it's weird because there was always a water main break in my area, either once in the spring and once in the winter. And the water company, when they came out to repair it, would never let the residents know their water was going to be off for whatever length of time. So I assumed that's what it was in the beginning. So I go out and I ask my neighbor, like, is his water off? And he's like, no. But I had to go down there and pay it. My bill was big and they were, you know, and I thought I was going to get shut off. And I'm like, have you seen a Detroit water truck in the neighborhood? Because I'm thinking like maybe it got cut off, but I've never gotten shut off before because I've always tried to make a payment even if I couldn't pay it full. And he goes, no, I didn't see a water department truck because unbeknownst to residents, the water department the city had hired a demolitions company called Homrick, who were supposed to do blight removal. And they were also using them to turn off people's water. So people didn't even know the water company was coming out because it was no water company coming out. It was an independent contractor. And just to give you an idea of the effect, after I discovered all of this and went to seek help and became an activist, I've seen Homrick, 2 men in a truck, shut off a mile long of a city street in less than an hour. That's how quick they do it. It's literally one guy jumps out, turns the key, sprays it, moves to the next house. They don't knock on the door. They don't give a person a chance to say, well, let me try to make a payment or find out if there's elderly, disabled, or children in the house. They just shut it off and record the address. That's it. And so,
Nicole, how long were you without water that was the second time?
No, this was the first time.
Okay.
And I was off for 2 months. The second time I was off for about 5 weeks, and I ended up getting hospitalized behind it. I have asthma, so mistake on my part, but it was necessary to conserve water, which is basically how you learn to live with water. Even if you have access to buying bottled water, you try to find ways to get the most usage out of the amount of water you have or to conserve it. So the first thing you do is stop drinking water, which is not good in and of itself for your health. But another thing you do is you tend to not want to waste water to clean. So what I was doing is using straight undiluted cleaning products. So I would use straight undiluted bleach, straight undiluted pine cleaner, straight undiluted ammonia, anything I thought that could thoroughly disinfect and clean my house without me using water. The mistake is obviously they're meant to have water added to them when you're using them for cleaning. So I'm inhaling these fumes. I'm not drinking enough water. And then I'm making extra fumes because, of course, and everyone I've talked to who's dealt with a water shutoff has said this, you have to recycle water and save it to flush the toilet. So like if you wash dishes, you pour that water in a bucket. If you bathe, you pour that water in a bucket. And then when it's enough, you pour it in the toilet to make the toilet flush, which means that multiple uses are happening with the toilet without being flushed. Therefore, again, a mistake, you pour bleach into the toilet to try to cut the odor, which I obviously science mixed with the ammonia in urine, and you can't open the lid after that. So I was doing that, and then you go in there and you're like, well, I have to use it, so you just use it, and it's like, oh my God, I can't breathe. And so that irritated my lungs. And then right around that time, both Ebola and the enterovirus were the huge viruses that were going on. And I literally remember going to the initial meeting with the United Nations rapporteurs. That next day, we had a town hall at Wayne County Community College. And I went to the town hall. I spoke. It was like John Conyers was there, all these elected officials and the rapporteurs, and then hundreds of citizens and activists. And I spoke about my story. And I remember that I did not feel good. I had not felt good the day before. But I thought, oh, it's my asthma acting up, or I'm catching a case of the flu. And right after that meeting, I managed to make it home. And I remember just like, my daughter's like, Mommy, just rest. And I think she was like, just turned 14. And I'm like, okay, I tried to rest. I couldn't get comfortable. I woke up at like 4:00 in the morning with the chills, but I was sweating. And I'm like, I can't do it. I got to go to the hospital. I don't know what's wrong. I went to the hospital and they thought that I had the enterovirus. So they quarantined me in a room, and I didn't know what to do. And I was beyond any measure of thinking like, what is my next step? I didn't know what to do, because I'm like, I'm going to die. I can't breathe. I'm going to die. And my mom used to be a nurse. So one of the nurses that was there when she was in the hospital, working at the hospital, was still there. And she just happened to be on duty. And she saw me and was talking to me like, what are you in here for? And I'm like, I just burst into tears. And I was like, I don't have any water. And now I can't breathe. And I know I haven't been taking care of myself. And she's like, you have to let the doctor know you don't have any water. And I'm like, they're going to take my kids, because that's what they do. If you even go to MDH, the Department of Health and Human Services, for help, and they can't help you, which I experienced when I went the first time to try to get help with my water. And they said, we only pay $175. And the water department said, that's not going to do anything. The worker turns to me and says, that's grounds for removal of your children from your home. And at the time I had my youngest baby with me, who was like 6.5, and she just burst into tears. And I just grabbed her and ran out of there. And I never went back to DHS ever. And all I thought from that point with the first incident was to hide my children, which I did. Didn't work out, because my daughter, I always jokingly say, escaped my aunt's house and tried to come back to my house in the middle of the night, and the police found her. And just luckily no one heard her, and the police didn't take my kids. So when you fast forward to the second time, and I'm in the hospital now in October of this year, the same year, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I've tried everything I could. And then I felt bad too, because I have worked really hard with Michigan Welfare Rights Agency organization to help me try to get my water turned back on. And they did, because they talked to the then deputy director, who was Daryl Latimer, who had gotten on TV and pretty much humiliated poor low-income people by saying that we're lazy, we don't pay our bills, we focus on buying our kids designer shoes and expensive cell phones and taking trips and all of this, anything but paying our bills. And that's just not the case. And he said, well, we cut off everyone because we don't know who can pay or who's just choosing not to pay. And if someone can't pay and they contact us, we'll help them. And one of the activists caught him in the hallway during the bankruptcy hearing, which I had started sitting in on because I joined a class action lawsuit against the city about the water shutoffs. And he goes, okay, I'll help her. And he had got my water on the first time back in the summer. He got it turned on in July of 2014 after it had been off for 2 months. But it was like a recipe to fail because he called me, he said, how much can you pay a month on a water bill? And I said, $150. And he goes, okay. And he said, go pay your $150. We'll have your water cut back on. But you have to get the new smart meter. So the lawyer handling the case said, well, we want to have that meter diagnosed to see if it has any, diagnostic issues, and maybe that's what attributed to your high water bill, which they never gave us the results of. And so he turns my water back on. I pay my $150 for July. I pay it for August. I pay it for September. In October, they shut my water off again and never gave me a shut-off notice. They were supposed to put door knockers on people's doors, letting them know to contact the water department and they were subject to shut-off. I got my door knocker about 8 hours after my water got cut off, not prior to, as they were telling people they were going to do. So when it had got cut off the second time and I got hospitalized, the lawyers and some of the activists got together and were like, we cannot let you come back home and you don't have water and you're that sick. And it ended up being that now my doctor says directly related to my water shutoff, I have what's called compromised lungs because inhaling all of those fumes and not drinking enough water to flush my system out. They ran several tests trying to find out what was wrong with me while I was in the hospital. And I ended up that I had contracted bacterial pneumonia. So the bacteria just caused inflammation. I had pulmonary edema. So I had fluid in my lungs and I had to stay in the hospital. I was on a respirator for like a week. And then I stayed in the hospital for another week recovering. And then I came home and recovered further. But now the slightest little thing can aggravate my lungs. So like right now at this moment, I've been wearing masks since before they told us to wear masks. Because once I heard COVID, I'm like, oh my God. I did this investigation all on my own and discovered that I was being double billed because I was being billed at that address because since I was the last tenant, instead of them just sending the bill to the resident, they were billing the last tenant because they said they assumed I had not moved. They never admitted to it. One of the representatives admitted, like, when I was telling her about what I investigated and what I came up with, she was like, that's exactly what it shows on here. It shows that part of your bills, part of your payments were going to the other water bill. They were trying to figure out how to divide it to try to cover both bills. But the water department as an executive department will never admit that. And I'm pretty sure if she testified, they would fire her. So, and then the thing is that what happened was after I got my water restored in October of 2014, I was paying my bill again, but they were still trying to give me this big arrearage bill of like $5,400. So as if that dealing without water didn't ruin my life enough, only way I could get rid of this bill to even be able to have water in my name again would be to file bankruptcy. So I filed bankruptcy, and all the credit leverage that I had was now gone. And my credit score is probably under 600 right now. So I'll probably not be able to buy a home because I have really bad credit. It's hard for me. I can't get a car. Meaning as soon as they run my credit, they're like, oop, nope, she's a credit risk. And I do have some things that's on my credit that are legitimate, but I'm paying on them, like my student loans. But the major thing on my credit that is showing up is this huge, almost $6,000 bill that shows up on my credit. But the only way I could get rid of it would be to file bankruptcy because I live in subsidized housing. And so in order for me to move, I have to be able to either move into a residence that has water already and the landlord's paying for it, which is what ended up happening, or be capable of getting water myself. And the only way I could go to get water in my name again is if this bill is erased off of is not attached to my name, that it's been charged off. So it has been discharged and it's been paid off by the bankruptcy. So I will be able to get water. But here's the kicker. I haven't lived at the address where all this occurred since 2017, but I still get a bill every month that says the month after I moved out, they charged me $148 when I wasn't living in the house. So they did the same thing again, charged me for when I wasn't living there. And I get a bill every month saying, pay $140, you owe $148. And to show you how their management works, the bill comes to my current address with my name on it. It says my name or current resident. So then that means that you would attach my debt to someone else if they lived here that's followed me from another house. And that's how they do business. So I don't know if some of the debt attached to me is from another person. Well, I know the debt attached to the people squatting in the house is, which is what I discovered. And I let them know all of this and they did nothing. All I asked for is for people to realize what's going on at the water department and use their leverage or their free will of ability to vote out elected officials that are against water affordability. If you look at the fact that I literally in a 2-year period from 2012 to when my water got cut off in May 2014, I had paid the water department $2,895 in water bills. It's not that I'm not paying them. The rates are unaffordable. You know, what I always want people to know is it doesn't matter if you're Black, if you're white, if you're brown, it can happen to anyone. All you have to do is not be part of that wealthiness. Right. If you're struggling to pay your bills, it can happen to you. If you live in Detroit, it can happen to you. If you live in Flint, your water can be contaminated. It doesn't matter. You can look at Flint. There were white, Black, Latinx. It didn't matter. They were all systemically poisoned. I kind of became like a public speaker and a poster child for the People's Water Board and Michigan Welfare Rights, speaking on water, because I have kind of like this poke the bear syndrome. And it's like when you keep poking the bear, it gets up and goes, rah, you know.